God says, if you notice these 5 signs, a major blessing is coming. Have you ever stood at the edge of what feels like an abyss, sensing something monumental on the horizon but seeing only fog? My friend, that spiritual vertigo, that holy discomfort, might be the first whisper of extraordinary change. 3 years ago, I found myself on my apartment floor in Portland at 2 a.m., jobless and heartbroken, questioning everything. What I couldn't see through my tears was that God wasn't ending my story, He was turning the page. Today, I'm sharing 5 unmistakable signs that appear when God is preparing something extraordinary in your life. And I promise you, they're not what most people expect. In fact, the biggest blessing often hides behind what looks like your greatest setback. Sign 1. The sacred disruption, when everything starts falling apart. The first sign that God is preparing something significant is what I call the sacred disruption, when relationships, opportunities, and plans that once seemed certain suddenly begin to dissolve. My inbox is filled with stories like Claire's, a 41-year-old nurse from Denver who lost her job, her apartment, and her fiancé within a 3-month period. It felt like God was punishing me, she wrote, but looking back, He was actually positioning me. Ever notice how your teenage daughter's room looks dramatically worse right before it gets cleaner? The mess intensifies as she sorts what stays and what goes. God works similarly in our lives. Before creating something new, He often clears the space first. I see this with my goddaughter Zoe, just 18 and navigating her freshman year at college. Her tearful calls about lost friendships and changed plans aren't signs of failure, they're evidence of a divine sorting process as God prepares her adult identity. Think about the woman with the issue of blood in Matthew 9. For 12 years, she suffered physically, financially, and socially. Everything in her life was disrupted. But that disruption positioned her perfectly in precisely the right street on the exact day Jesus would pass by. Her moment of healing required her to first experience years of disruption. The enemy wants you to interpret disruption as punishment. He whispers that falling apart means God has forgotten you. The truth? Disruption is often the first divine signal that God is creating space for something new. Where in your life right now do you see disruption? What comfortable arrangements are being challenged? These aren't random occurrences, they're sacred signals. The dismantling is making way for your reconstruction. Sign 2, the wilderness season, when God seems silent. The second sign, perhaps the most painful, is the season of divine silence when your prayers seem to hit the ceiling, when heaven feels like brass, when God's voice becomes a distant memory. In our instant everything culture, where Amazon delivers same day and TikTok serves dopamine hits every 15 seconds, divine silence feels particularly cruel. We've been conditioned to expect immediate responses, immediate solutions, immediate comfort. I spoke with Jackson, whose 14-year-old son battles severe anxiety. I've prayed every night for 3 years, he told me, voice breaking. The silence is deafening. Sometimes I wonder if God even hears me anymore. What Jackson couldn't see yet was that beneath the surface, like a seed in dark soil, critical development was occurring. God's silence wasn't His absence, it was His patience at work. If you're watching this right now and resonating with this wilderness season, I'd love to know you're here. Hit that like button, not just for the algorithm, though that helps, but to acknowledge that you're walking through this sacred silence too. Your simple action might encourage someone else feeling equally alone in their wilderness. Remember Jesus in Gethsemane? His most profound prayers were met with silence. That silence wasn't rejection, it was the necessary space between the prayer and the resurrection power that would soon change everything. Are you in a wilderness right now? Does heaven seem silent to your cries? Take heart. This isn't abandonment, it's appointment. God is doing His deepest work in your darkest times. Sign 3. The unexpected opposition when resistance intensifies. The third sign that God is about to do something extraordinary is unexpected opposition, when barriers appear where there were none before, when people turn against you without explanation. Now here's where I might challenge conventional teaching. The level of opposition you face is often proportional to the significance of what God is preparing. The enemy doesn't fight battles that don't matter. He doesn't set up roadblocks on dead-end streets. But here's the controversial question: is all opposition spiritual warfare, or might some of it be self-sabotage? Are we sometimes our own worst enemies, creating resistance because we're afraid of the very breakthrough we're praying for? I remember coaching Rebecca, a talented writer who kept facing mysterious obstacles to finishing her book. Upon deeper reflection, she realized her fear of criticism was causing her to unconsciously create disruptions whenever she approached completion. What battles are you fighting right now? Where are you facing inexplicable resistance? And the harder question, how much of that opposition is external, and how much might be your own resistance to what God is doing? When the blessing doesn't look like what you expected. Now, here's the unexpected turn in this journey that few spiritual teachers discuss. What if the something big God is preparing doesn't look anything like what you're praying for? What if the blessing comes disguised as a setback? What if the answer to your prayer is actually the ending of something you desperately wanted to continue? What if God's yes looks remarkably like what you'd consider a no? I received a message last week from Marcus in Chicago, who prayed fervently for his struggling restaurant to survive. Despite prayer chains and fasting, the business closed. Devastated, he took a temporary teaching position at a culinary school. 6 months later, he's impacting hundreds of young chefs and has discovered his true calling wasn't feeding people's bodies but nurturing their gifts. Consider this: the Israelites prayed for generations for their Messiah, expecting a conquering king. When Jesus arrived on a donkey instead of a war horse, with a message of love instead of military might, they missed their blessing because it didn't match their expectations. This raises the profound question that will carry us through the rest of this journey. What if the something big God is preparing for you right now looks nothing like what you're expecting? Will you recognize it when it arrives? Or will you reject it because it doesn't fit your preconceived image of what blessing should look like? Sign 4. The divine stripping when God asks you to let go. The fourth sign builds directly on our plot twist. It's when God begins to strip away what you thought you needed to make room for what He knows you need. This divine stripping is challenging because it often involves releasing good things, not just harmful ones. Things that may have once been blessings. Things that might still appear valuable. Think about your son's outgrown clothes. They're not bad clothes, they simply no longer fit the person he's becoming. Similarly, God sometimes asks us to release things not because they're negative, but because they no longer fit who He's shaping us to be. Maria, a 53-year-old executive from Seattle, described how God repeatedly closed doors on her corporate advancement, something she'd prayed for and worked toward for decades. Confused and hurt, she reluctantly began volunteering at a women's shelter, using her business skills to help residents build sustainable futures. "I thought success meant a corner office and 6 figures," she told me. God knew it meant creating pathways out of poverty for women who reminded me of my own mother. What looked like career failure became my life's greatest purpose. Here's the transformative truth: God doesn't take things away to diminish you, He removes them to make room for something greater. When He strips away the good, it's often to prepare you for His best. What are you clutching so tightly that it might actually be hindering your next season? What good thing might God be asking you to release so He can give you something greater? Sign 5. the supernatural alignments when coincidences multiply. The final sign shifts the atmosphere from preparation to anticipation, supernatural alignments that defy coincidence. After the disruption, after the silence, after the opposition, after the stripping, God begins to orchestrate circumstances, connections, and opportunities in ways that leave you breathless. Doors that were firmly closed suddenly crack open. People you've never met reach out with exactly what you need. Resources appear from unexpected sources. 17-year-old Ellie, my assistant's daughter, was devastated when her dream college rejected her application. 3 days later, she received a call from a small art school she'd never considered, offering not just admission but a full scholarship. The program aligned perfectly with her unique gifts in a way that Dream School never could have. The rejection wasn't God's punishment, it was His protection and direction. These divine alignments often appear random initially. But when you step back, you can see the intricate pattern. God is weaving a pattern you could never have orchestrated yourself. Scripture illustrates this beautifully. Ruth happened to glean in Boaz's field. Philip happened to be on the road when the Ethiopian eunuch needed understanding. The timing was too perfect, the circumstances too precise to be mere chance. These supernatural alignments aren't just God working circumstances in your favor. They're confirmations of something already completed in the spiritual realm that's now manifesting in your physical reality. Before God does something in your timeline, He has already accomplished it in eternity. Your breakthrough isn't something God is still figuring out, it's something He established before you were born that's now breaking into your experience. Look around your life right now. Where are you seeing unexpected connections? What doors are beginning to crack open? What resources are appearing seemingly out of nowhere? These aren't random events, they're divine breadcrumbs leading you to your destiny. God says, it's not falling apart, it's falling into place. My friend, if you're seeing these signs in your life today, the sacred disruption, the wilderness silence, the unexpected opposition, the divine stripping, the supernatural alignments, take heart. Something extraordinary is unfolding. The disruption isn't punishment, it's preparation. The silence isn't absence, it's alignment. The opposition isn't obstruction, it's confirmation. The stripping isn't subtraction, it's exchange. The alignments aren't coincidence, they're convergence. Remember, God rarely works in expected ways. The burning bush was an ordinary shrub until Moses looked closer. The still, small voice followed the earthquake and fire. The star that guided wise men didn't lead to a palace but a stable. I'd love to hear which of these signs you're experiencing right now. Share in the comments, your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hold on to hope. Join me next week as we explore the prophetic language of dreams and how God might be speaking to you even while you sleep. If this message has encouraged you, please subscribe to Sound Codes for more content that bridges ancient wisdom with modern transformation. Until then, remember this: the size of your struggle often indicates the size of your upcoming breakthrough. Hold on. It's coming. And it might look nothing like what you expected, it might be infinitely better.